Let's do that. So, yeah, so we do a quick introduction here. What we usually do is just
Had
who you
session like
are,
3 or
what
4
you're
days
doing,
ago. Yeah,
um, what you're
I
looking to
know that's so
accomplish by
long
attending
ago.
these
Should I ask him
meetups.
again? Okay.
Tim, you want to start?
Sure. I had everyone unmuted, but maybe I'll selectively unmute people just to keep the background noise down. Um, let's see here. By the way, it's not, I don't think the live stream is going to go, so we might just end up, just posting it later. Okay, so my name is Tim Skorzik, and I'm one of the founders of this group with Jordan, and I'm a loan officer and an investor. I have currently my wife and I manage 7 units all in Minneapolis. Most of them are long-term rentals, but we have 1 unit that's an Airbnb that we're trying out, which is an interesting time to be trying Airbnbs, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But it's going modestly well right now, I guess. Luckily, I don't need it to be super successful at this moment to work. So, yeah, I'll be participating with Adam and Jordan here tonight. Adam, do you want to go next?
Yeah, my name's Adam Taffel. I'm an agent at the Roseville Keller Williams office with Jordan. I'll be co-hosting this meetup from now until the indefinite future. I have a couple single-family investments. I focus on vacation rentals, and I manage properties for others as well. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Adam. My name's Jordan. I am an agent at Keller Williams Realty, but before I was an agent, I was a real estate investor, and that's really one of my main focuses. I absolutely love to help investors, and I love to help people build wealth through real estate, and I like to do so myself. So I own 20 units, long-term rentals, and mostly in Louisville, Kentucky, where I'm from. My goals with continuing to educate myself, continuing to be a part of a real estate investing community, is to continue to build that portfolio to a point to where without an issue, it could cover all my daily expenses. And I'm not quite there yet, so I'm still chugging along.
Alex, how about you?
I'm Alex. I've been to quite a few meetups. I'm currently house hacking and just saving up for the next property in the next couple of years.
Nice.
I can go next.
Kevin, I'm going to unmute you real quick here. How about you go?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So my name's Kevin Lorian. I have a duplex kind of in the north end of Minneapolis, a little higher, a little farther north than the crime line, so that's nice. We aren't house hacking, so we do have it currently occupied, and we're looking to ramp up for our second one.
Awesome.
Hey, how about we do this for those of you who are looking at your next property? What are you thinking about? Let's add that to the mix. So, Kevin, why don't you tell us what are your thoughts for your second one, and then Alex will jump back to you before Presley.
So we bought our first one in early November of 19. So we've only been in it 6 months or so. So we're still, me and my wife are still pretty early, but everything's been going pretty smooth. We've got good renters in there now. We're looking at non-owner occupied, and we'll go most likely a duplex on like the northern half of the cities, just because we're in Blaine. So it's just easier for us to self-manage.
Cool. Alex, how about you? What do you think your next one's going to be, or what are you planning on doing anyway?
I like the South Metro. I'm not a big fan of Minneapolis, St. Paul. I like the suburbs, and I'm house hacking a townhouse. So I'll either be buying probably another similar thing like mine, maybe something in my neighborhood, or maybe a bigger single family house and then just have a couple more roommates, and then just buy something that the numbers work for a long-term rental when I move out is the goal.
Okay. Presley, how about you, bud? Let me unmute you here real quick. Sorry. There you go. Go ahead.
How's it going? I obviously do not have one yet. A lot of people know that. I'm more here just I have buddies that are interested in doing one, but they don't. I would possibly manage them with my girlfriend, so I would take on a lot of that. And I'm just trying to see if anybody has ideas on how to partner with someone or get more partnering ideas for down the line when it comes to that. And then after my first one, I want to. I don't want to stop. I don't want to, keep the wheels turning, I guess. So just trying to keep thinking ahead.
Cool. All right. Down here, I see Rocha is the name. What's your name?
Richard, it's Richard.
Richard. Okay, Richard. How's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you?
Good. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Richard. This is actually the third meeting I've been to. I stopped going for a while. I got super busy. I'm currently house hacking a duplex in St. Paul, and I just got a house also in St. Paul and a contract for deed that I close on in September. So I got that one, way under market value, and I'm going to do that as an investment property. And then I'm looking to get into a fourplex in the next 6 months. So. Yeah.
Your off market closes in September, or it closed last September?
It closes. So I got one in October, and then I got this one on a contract for deed, and it closes this September.
Oh, contract.
And I think I got all the paperwork done last month, the beginning of last month before this whole thing started happening. So now I'm kind of worried, but I think we'll be able to close in September. It's a 6-month contract for deed, basically.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Logan, I'm unmuting you. Tell us about yourself, Logan.
Yeah, so my wife and I recently closed on an off-market duplex. We're looking at hopefully moving into and house hacking a triplex or quad in the next couple of months. Just kind of keeping our options open and seeing what happens with this weird market here. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Cool. So you said you closed on an off-market duplex and you're looking for something else here in the next few months?
Yeah, we got kind of lucky with the property we bought recently. A realtor was the agent for a property that had effect July. The previous owners had a total loss fire essentially,
Right.
and he brought the property to us.
So unfortunately, I don't think.
Everything happened to be new, and so that was the last house hack we did. But we're going to be a quad here.
Okay. Unfortunately, your line was breaking up quite a bit, so I didn't catch all that. But we're gonna keep going. So, Thor, can you tell us about yourself? I'm unmuting you here. Oh. Okay, I can't seem to get Thor unmuted. I'm not sure. Maybe he doesn't want to be unmuted. I don't know. I'll try again a couple later. But why don't we maybe get to it a little bit? Adam, working with Jordan and I is gonna kind of be the main presenter here. So what I'm going to do is pull up the thing on my screen, and let's see here.
Oh, Mike.
Excuse me a second. I'm going to just share my screen. Oh, hey, we got one more late ad. I can tell he's connecting here. Mike Vanderland, who's actually my production manager. Hey, while Mike's connecting, Richard, I saw that you put something about, did we all see this, but I can't tell what it is. What were you talking about there?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that chat was working.
Oh, got it. Okay, yep. Yeah, I can see it. I guess Mike didn't connect after all, so we'll get going. I'm gonna share my screen here real quick. All right, Adam, take it away.
All right. Oh, that fills up my whole screen, and then I lose my. 1 second, just a technical issue here. Oh,
Is it too much?
no, I just had some notes, and I was hoping to be able to view them, and also the PowerPoint. But let me just. I think I just need to put this in. Yep, there we go. All right, we're all good on my end. So yeah, like I said, my name is Adam. I'm an agent with Keller Williams, help people invest. Today we're going to be talking about how to purchase your second or next investment property. This is going to kind of skim the surface because this is so specific to the individual and what kind of situation you're in. But we want to give you a brief overview of what we think is important, what you guys can do to start planning today, and how you can position yourself to make more deals happen in the future. So we came up with the pool analogy today, which is if you know anything about playing pool, if you just focus on the shot that you're shooting, you're going to get beat by the guy who is thinking 3 shots ahead. So you don't just focus on your next deal. Real estate investment, if you want to build wealth and passive income, it's not going to happen with one deal. And so much like pool, if you get stuck with a cue ball between the rail and your partner's ball, you know, that rail could be a zoning department when you didn't pull the proper permits. That ball could be the fact that, oh, you should have used a conventional loan on your first deal instead of, you know, using an FHA because of your specific income bracket. So planning is key. There's really no blanket advice, but think about your long-term goals. So you could use like the 4-hour work week model of kind of like reverse lifestyle engineering. Like what is a reasonable life that you want for yourself? How much is that going to cost you? Once you have just kind of this number, then you can position yourself. You can surround yourself with experts, whether they be agents, lenders. Ideally, they'll be people who have done this before, who, you know, if you can pick a goal for yourself and you find someone who's actually executed that goal, you know, just surrounding yourself with people for that long-term plan and not just focusing on that deal. So planning for your new loan is going to be very specific to meeting with a lender. I always tell people, if you have even an inclination of buying another property ever in your life, you should be speaking with lenders on a somewhat regular basis. Not one size fits all. What did we mean by that? Yeah, I guess, let's see.
No blanket advice.
Yeah, there's no blanket advice. So yeah, we're going over a surface level of general things you should be doing, but then we really hope to hear from each of you about where you're at. I'm personally, I own 2 single families. I'm in the process of unoccupying one of them so that I can then qualify for an occupant loan on a multifamily. But I'm going to need to move out for a bit, and I'm going to need to do some financial finagling in my own life to make it happen. So
I think that's interesting. I'm going to stop you a second. What is it about your situation that makes it important for you to move out? So I think that's an interesting case study.
Yeah, so there's something called the test of reasonability where lenders, the number one form of mortgage fraud is occupancy fraud. Is that correct, Tim?
That's correct.
Okay. So people saying that, so for example, if you live in a 5-bedroom house in a nice suburb, oh, now I want to live in a studio apartment in Dinkytown. The bank is just not going to believe you. So there's something called the test of reasonability, which dictates that, and there's certain ways of getting around it, and no situation is the same. So talk to your lender. But in my case, I live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and I want to occupy a 4-plex. So the bank is probably not going to believe me unless I move out for a period of time. So now I live in a studio apartment. I get everyone in the house on their own lease. Now I can come to a lender and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a place I want to occupy. Maybe I refinance and I can get an FHA loan. Maybe I go conventional, but I can still get those more desirable interest rates and terms from an occupant loan. And I think Tim's going to talk more later about the difference between occupying and not, and all of the benefits and leverage you get from being able to live in the property, or being willing to live in the property for at least a year.
Yeah, so that's interesting because you mentioned the reasonability test, and it's funny because when you say that terminology, I think it's something totally different. So when talking to a lender, it's always important, or when we're talking to anyone, to clarify what we're talking about, because when we were talking about reasonability test earlier today, and you mentioned something to me, and I said, well, that only applies to 3 and 4 unit buildings on FHA. I was thinking of something completely different from what you were actually talking about. So,
and I was confused by your answer. So I'm glad to know that we were not on the same page, because yeah. And can you talk a bit about that, Tim? Does that, so from what I understand it, the bank has a hierarchy of living situations, and I think it starts with a 4-plex. Is that going to vary based on the type of loan you have, or is that something you want to follow across the board, Tim?
You mean what loan is best for the situation? It's not one size fits all, just like the last slide said, which, by the way, I think it might be more interesting if we're not looking at slides and we're viewing each other. So I'm going to bring this down, if that's all right. To answer your question, it's there isn't a one size fits all. I think that if it was an ideal world, I think that people would start off with the conventional loan, because it's a little bit cheaper than the FHA, and it also, sellers like it more, so it's a little easier to get offers accepted. But the reality is that loan's changed a lot over the last couple of years, and it really changed dramatically when they lowered the maximum, income that someone could have to qualify for it. And once they did that, they made that a loan that's not very commonly used, or not as common as it used to be. And so, ironically, FHA, which used to be considered kind of the second choice by a lot of people and used to be looked down upon by lenders, my best clients with the most income only can qualify for FHA, right? So, at least with a small down payment. So I think that they're both good. I would start with the conventional if your income's low enough, but if your income's high, that won't be an option, and then FHA is the loan you'd start with, and then it just limits your options because there's only a couple small down payment loans, unless of course you're a vet, like a VA, qualify for a VA loan. Did that answer what you're asking? Yeah,
and so one specific example that we were speaking of before this meeting was if you want to occupy a triplex or a 4-plex, you can't make more than, if you make more than $79,000 a year, you're going to have to put, 25% down. If you make under $79,000 a year, you can put 5% down. So the meeting with a lender often goes into that, because very few agents, myself, I can't speak to the ins and outs of all these lending limits and restrictions. Your agent probably isn't going to know it as well. So, if you could put yourself in a situation where, well, I made $60 a year and I used my FHA loan already on a triplex. Now, well, I want to do this next deal, but I need 25% down. I wish I would have known about this. So, know what you're getting into and surround yourself with a lender who can direct you.
Yeah, and it's gotten trickier because the only way for us to know what loan you should know is to know your exact debts and your exact income, because we can use, the cool thing about the conventional loan is if we need to, we can use the rent on the property that you're moving into. And on the conventional loan, but not FHA, the property you're moving out of, we can use those rents too. But when we add those rents, the total still cannot exceed that 79,000, right? So I need to know much more than you might think in order to know whether that's a good idea or even possible. So it is very case specific. That's why I don't want to give too much general advice there. But I will say that there is some flexibility. If you make exactly 79,000, we don't have to use any of the rent. But then again, we can't use any of the rent, right? Otherwise, you'd trip over the number. So yeah.
It's a lot of information to process when it's not, we're not even speaking to your specific scenario, but the thesis is to talk to your lender and give them all the information you have, because if you're thinking 3 moves ahead and you convey that to your lender, then you'll be able to plan accordingly.
No.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to go to the next bullet point, but maybe you had something there.
Well, you know, in terms of thinking ahead, I think where people really miss the boat on that one is they don't really think about how much money they're going to need and how much they need to save. And then it causes them to get in a situation where they're like, okay, I'm now mentally ready to own another house, meaning like I've got my remodel done, I've learned how to be a landlord, or whatever it is that's kind of like, you know, when you buy a property, you're not immediately, most people thinking I want another one. So they have to get mentally ready, and then they say, okay, what do I need to do? But that, now all of a sudden, the answer is almost always save up for your next down payment. Yet they could have been thinking about that while they were purchasing their last property, like you said, looking ahead, and they already have plans in place to be automatically putting money away or something like that. So I think the biggest answer for most people in planning ahead, it's almost always savings, and sometimes it's debt reduction. But debt reduction is something we tend to naturally do a little bit more when we're investing. The savings for down payment isn't as common in my eyes.
Yeah, saving money is key. Has anyone else noticed in the last 3 weeks how much money you usually spend on going out to eat? Or even just like, what kills me, I'll never say no to a friend who wants to get lunch, or like people who say don't spend money on coffee. Like spending $4 to hang out at a coffee shop is so worth it to me. But it's crazy. Like I'm making, unfortunately, a bit less money than normal in the last 3 weeks, and probably I'll be seeing that in the next few weeks. But looking at my credit card statement, it's actually looking okay. So I don't know if anyone else can relate. It's been a little eye-opening, all the frivolous spending that can really be cut out, like, you know, grabbing a sandwich instead of going to Chipotle, things like that that are just unnecessary. And at the end of the month, they really add up.
Yeah, we do a lot of eating out. Like we'd probably eat out once a week as a family if this wasn't going on. So that's definitely something for us. Plus, Jordan and I talked about this on a different thing, but we cut back $100 a month in just subscription fees that we normally use, but we don't really need. You know, things that are kind of nice to have, but aren't all that critical. So we trimmed back a little bit there, and we're looking at trimming some other expenses just to be smart, right? And so this is a good time to tighten the belt a little bit. But yeah.
And when it comes to saving money, like people, like I just did, I mean, I'm just going to like disagree with my own statement, but like, it's really the big ticket items that are going to save you. Like if a dryer breaks in one of my places, I'm going all over Craigslist. I'm lowballing people. I'm going to pull up with my truck and make sure it works and grab the dryer. You know, paying, just minimizing. If you have investment goals, you know, you'd be surprised what $6,000 gets you in a sedan, you know, if you pay cash. So just always and you know, you only live once too. Everything's about finding a balance. You know, I would never, don't turn into a boring person who just saves money. But I find I'm very, very focused on getting the best deal when it comes to every big ticket item in my life. That's why I house hack. I mean, that's obviously the biggest expense. But yeah, and any extra ways to make money, you know, if you're looking to expand your empire. I spent, you know, that my career before this was as a bartender and a server, and I'll still work the big parties in downtown St. Paul. I don't care if I closed a couple deals that week, I'll bartend all night on St. Patrick's Day. So, you know, don't turn down opportunities, even if they seem to be small, because at the end of the year, it could make or break you getting that deal.
Yeah. Something that Presley said earlier, and it kind of fits off something you just said too, or you know, about planning. Well, so it fits more off of something that Presley said, is that I think what a lot of people can do too, because we're talking a lot about the house hacking side of it, but if you're going to buy a property that you're not going to live in, those situations are ripe for bringing on a partner. So, and the more partners you can bring on, and or the more people you can bring in, that will shorten your timeline to your next property, right? Because for the most part, what I find, again, from the financial side, the biggest hang up for almost all my clients is how much money they have to put down, especially if they're not living in it, right? Because if you're not living in it, you're looking at either 20 or 25% for a multifamily property, and even 20 on a single family, right? For most of them. So if you're having some success right now and you're doing well in your properties, one of the things you can do to get ready for your next property is simply to talk about it. Meaning, like, if you are out when things are social, talk to your friends about what you're doing. Talk about the successes you're having, and what you've learned. Even talk about some of the things you've learned, so that they know and are ready and are primed to potentially be a partner. You can even start, if you feel like you're at a point, start mentioning, I'm looking for partners. Do you know anyone who's interested, right? By doing that, once you start getting partners, now you don't have to wait a year or 2 years in between. You could potentially get stuff right away.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a minute about debt as well. And this, again, just goes into not making decisions without consulting an expert first. So, you know, it's maybe attractive to me to pay off a mortgage that I have, because, like, oh, that's a paid off house, that's going to feel good. But I'm not going to make that kind of decision without, obviously I have more ambitious goals for myself. So I'm not going to put a huge amount of cash into paying off a mortgage. But even like a car payment, even if you have bad consumer debt from the past or medical debt, you know, definitely consult an expert, because a lot of the times that cash is better spent in your bank account, even though you get that, you know, that good feeling from paying off a debt. It's not always the best move.
I would definitely say, without a doubt, that right now, like, you know, in this current market, coronavirus, in this environment, I highly recommend not paying off debt right now, because you might think, well, if I don't have that debt, I don't have that payment. But chances are the debt is $3,000 and the payment is $40 when it comes to something like a credit card. And that $3,000 will pay that credit card payment for a long time, but it'll also pay your rent, your car payment, or your mortgage as well, or pay for that water heater that breaks, or the toilet that you need to replace in a rental. So for the time being, unless you know you have a lot of cash, I think paying down debt is a really bad idea for the short term. So for what it's worth.
Another obvious thing to prepare is that if you plan on occupying another property, you need to get it ready for tenants. So you're going to want to get a lease in place. Any sort of deferred maintenance, it's probably, if you're planning on renting out your current home, it's probably not the best time to skimp on building materials, you know, kind of tenant-proof things when you can. Again, your lender, depending on your loan, is either going to look to that income, is going to project that income for the next purchase, or maybe they're not. But talk to your agent and your lender about what you should be doing when it comes to moving out and prepping your occupied home to look like an attractive asset rather than a liability.
Right. And I think part of what you could say there is like, once you actually start going to look for properties and you get one under contract, things are going to move so fast that you won't have time to get your place ready for rent and rent it. Because, if you want to get a renter in as soon as you move out, you're going to have things are going to move faster than it seems. And you need to have the place ready to rent right away. At the very least, it should be rent ready, but even having pictures and all that taken ahead of time so that you can just kind of hit send and market it is a really good idea.
Tim, what is the bank typically, maybe this is too open-ended of a question, so I apologize if it is, but if I have a single family home and my expenses, maybe my mortgage is $1,250, maybe I'm all in at $1,500 in expenses, is there a certain amount of cushion or cash flow that the bank is going to want to look for to cancel out that liability?
Sure, it depends on the loan program, right? So it is a little generic, but I'll give you kind of some mindset, because a lot of times people think to themselves like, okay, if I get a mortgage payment at $1,000 and I rented at $1,000, it didn't really hurt me, right? But mortgage lenders look at that rent is having a cost to it. Things like vacancy, maintenance, repairs, all that. So they generally will give you 75 cents on the dollar. So if you had a place that rented that cost you $1,000 a month and it rented for $1,000, we would only give you 75 cents on the dollar of that $1,000, and it was like going backwards on your debt to income by $250 a month. So that's part of what you're asking there. But going beyond that, a little different scenario. If you had anything that cost you $250 a month, whether it's a deficiency on rent or a car payment that was just $250 a month, lenders, you have to make more than $250 to cancel that debt out, right? Because we look at debt ratios, and it's not 1-to-1. So a car payment isn't, oh, I just got a $250 raise, so I can go get a car payment for $250 and it'll be like nothing changed, right? That's not how we look at it. We look at a debt ratio. So if you had a $250 car payment and you had a $500 raise, that would be 50%, right? You got a $500 raise, you spent $250 of it on a car, you're spent 50%. For most loan programs, 50% debt ratio is too high. Now there are some that work, but I'm thinking especially when you're talking the FHA will go up to 50 or above, but conventional duplexes pretty much won't. And certainly non-owner occupied, you're not going to be getting 50% ratios. So you actually need more than 500 to be able to afford a $250 car and not affect your debt ratios.
Tim, didn't those recently change too? Like as of last week, didn't they tighten up a little bit?
Surprisingly, so there has been a lot of tightening, but not on debt ratios. At least, but credit scores for FHA borrowers tightened up quite a bit last week. Debt ratios have not yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happens.
What did FHA used to be?
Well, technically speaking, just so everyone on the call knows, and if you watch this online later, FHA doesn't have a minimum credit score, or if they do it so low, it's like they might have a score of 500. I believe there's no minimum score. But if you go below 580, they have a minimum down payment increase, right? But we could easily do 600 up until last week, and we could go down to 580 if debt ratios were low and stuff like that. Now, as of last week, most lenders require a higher credit score. I've heard anywhere from our company is 640, which is on the lower end. I've heard some companies are requiring 680. And the reason why is because there's not a big market for people to buy those loans. You have to think of like, loans are an investment, right? So someone is buying your mortgage at some point if you get a mortgage, and the people who are willing to buy mortgages aren't willing to buy low credit score FHA loans right now. So that means a lender like us or my competitors are fearful that we won't be able to sell it to someone. Consequently, our credit scores had to go up quickly.
something we hear, or something at least I hear as an agent all the time, is people who want to hold off on buying because I'm going to work on my credit or I'm going to work on saving. And I was financially irresponsible in a former life, AKA my early 20s. And so I bought my first house with like a 583 and I got a great interest rate. I didn't get a prime interest rate for the time, but I got if you look at the last 20 years, I got a great interest rate.
Yeah.
And now
I'm glad you said that because it's all relative, right? People.
Yeah. So, and going back to what you just said about debt ratios and leasing a car, the lesson in all of this is to speak with someone before you make any financial decision that's, substantial in your life. If you have investment goals, that's when you call someone who knows more than you, who you trust, and you say, hey, I'm thinking about leasing this truck. What do you, is this stupid? And they'll say, yeah, don't do that. You don't need that truck right now. You want financial independence, pay cash for something. Or maybe the lender will say, no, you need that cash.
Or, sometimes it's like, okay, I get that you might need a reliable car for work. Can you get the house first and then get the car? At least that will, at least the cash flowing property or the living rent free will allow you to pay off that car quicker. But if you do it the opposite way and you don't get the house, now all of a sudden you've lost out on the house and you still have the liability. So if we need to, we hedge our bets, right? I agree with Adam. But if that's not going to work for you, at least let's spin it a little bit, right? Put it a little bit in your favor.
Someday that property is going to pay for a, Mercedes, maybe, if that's what you like when you're 55 or whatever.
True that. So I remember our first property, and I won't get into long stories or anything, but our first property, I remember how thrilled I was the day that it paid for my car payment. And that took at least 5 years of owning it before that happened, but it was super thrilling. And then I remember when it started paying for my house payment, and somewhere right around 7-8 years ago, that property started cash flowing enough that it paid my house payment. And I didn't use the money on my house, but let's put it this way: if I lost my job, my house would have been covered from that point forward from that property, and that's pretty liberating right there. So.
Heck yeah.
I tell you what, I think we should start getting into questions too. I mean, if you got any other points, that's cool. And Jordan, I'm sure you might have a point or two, but I definitely want to hear from people because I want to be able to answer what's on people's minds. So, Jordan, you want to say something, and then people come up with some questions?
I'll tell a little bit of my story. So I bought my first duplex FHA. At the time, Tim, the guidelines were different. This was before we met, but you were recommending people buy conventional first and then FHA.
Right.
So I bought my first FHA using a loan officer that just didn't know what they were doing. Well, he knew what he was doing. He just didn't know how to help plan out multiple steps. So bought it first FHA, and then a year later I said, oh, well, I want to go buy another duplex. And I think at the time I had met you, and he said, okay, well, you're going to have to put 15% down now to buy the second one. So, I could have bought 5% down on the first one and 3.5% on the second at the time. Instead, I had to save up a bunch of extra money and put down 15% on the next property. Had I known better, I would have put down 8.5% for 2 properties and had more money to go do the next deal. So I really do think it's important to talk to somebody. And buying your first property is mentally the hardest. It absolutely is. It's getting over those fears and those mental blocks to get it done. And buying their second property can either be really easy or difficult if you've talked to the right people. So it just makes a big difference of planning everything from the beginning. Don't just get numero uno without number 2 in mind. You got to always be about what's next, or you're going to make some mistakes.
I agree. By the way, I think Alex, you're not supposed to. If you're gonna eat like that, you got to share with the rest of the group. Did you send drumstick ice cream cones out to everybody? I can't even get him off mute. I don't know why. It's not it's not unmuting, but
So
there we go.
how
No.
much?
You can
I'm
come
curious.
over. I have
Huh?
more at the house.
I love ice cream, by the way. So
I do
I'm with
too.
you. I just had to give you a shout out.
How many pounds does everyone plan on gaining in the next month?
Well,
I'm in the fridge. It's constant. And then not only am I snacking all the time, but I'm cooking like extravagant dinners for myself. I'm making like a corned beef, like brisket, or like roasting a chicken. Just things I would never ever do. But like, well, you quarantine, you know?
Right.
I don't have a scale, so I'm okay. I just have to go to the scale at the gym. So
Right.
Buddy.
Just so you know, I unmuted everyone. It looks like Kevin's is still muted, but I did hit the unmute. Kevin, do you want to stay muted, or do you want me to try to unmute you?
I'm checking in. My 1-year-old I just put down, so I'm kind of checking in and out with her. That's why I've had my video off. So
No, it's all good. I was just wondering. It's all
yeah,
good.
I'll be
But I do
pretty
want
quiet
this to
'cause of
start to be a conversation. So if people have questions, we'll try to take it one at a time. But definitely would like to talk about that. And if not, you know, I've said it before, and I know most of you have seen me talk, so I don't need to. But I really do believe in finding partners. Like when we talk about next property, you can be house hacking your first property, not even be ready to buy your second, and you could still buy a non-owner occupied property if you have a partner, right? And if you don't have money, what does that mean? That means you need to create the value. You need to know how to find a good deal. You need to know what the plan is, and you need to manage it. But a lot of you I've seen at the meetups, I know you know what you're doing. I don't know if you know what you're doing yet, because a lot of times, like Jordan says, it takes confidence, right? And if you can get that confidence, you can be at a point where you can start ramping up more quickly. And for my wife and I, that's really when our business took off. I tried to do everything myself for a while, and it takes a long time to save up these down payments once you get out of the house hacking world. And it's not necessary, right? Yeah, you won't make 100% of the profit, but you'll be buying a house every year, or maybe several a year, instead of one every 5 to 7 years. And the math works in your favor to be buying them all the time, even if you're getting a fraction of the ownership compared to 100% of a house every 7+ years. So Jordan helped me with this, but like we sold 5 houses. We bought 5 houses in 2017. In a year and a half later, late 2017, by 2019, we'd sold them all and profited over $300,000. And those houses were not that was not money I saved. I partnered with people. What I really did is I borrowed money from them. I didn't truly partner with them. But depending on the situation you're in, I had a lot of, I had a long history of being able to do this. So I was able to kind of negotiate terms that worked really well in my favor that way. But, my partner, so to speak, still made a decent amount of money. I just made quite a bit more because it wasn't a 50-50 deal, right? But I'm a believer that anyone on this call has experience to be able to start doing that. And that is really, if you want your next property and you just open your mind up to every possibility, coming up with a plan that works, that you can execute, that's safe, that you can help people right now who have lost a lot of money in their stock market and they're looking for alternative investments, helping them get confident in a good plan to buy rental real estate. That's not a get rich quick plan or a speculative plan, but it's a good solid plan. You put that together and people are interested in listing right now more than they were a couple months ago. Because a couple months ago, frankly, their stock portfolios were killing it and they thought they'd never go down. And they thought, rental real estate, what if we have the next crash? Well, we'll see what happens here, but I think real estate's going to look really beautiful when this is all said and done.
And then, so yeah, to your point about finding a partner, if I could just like play matchmaker here for a second, I think your first, Presley, is that your name? Can you hear me, bud?
Yeah, it is.
So, you've been talking about maybe not being able to buy, but, willing to partner, willing to work with people. And then I think I think it was Logan talking about a contract for deed property that he recently secured. I think I have the name right there.
That was me.
Richard.
That was Richard. Yeah.
Oh, Richard. My bad.
I'm actually typing my scenario to Tim. Are you a lender then, Tim?
Yeah.
So I guess I just typed it. So yeah, what happened to me was my lender. So I came across this deal. I was doing my exit interview for the Army, and the guy said, I have a property that I've been renting for years. I'd be lucky if I got $100,000 for it. So then I offered him 117. He accepted, and he wanted to put it on a contract for deed. Then I talked to my lender and I said, what can I do about this? And he said, put it on a contract for deed for 6 months. And then because you'll have over 25% equity in the property, we can refinance and you won't have to bring much money besides closing costs. But later, 2 weeks ago, he noticed that they're actually going to take the price that I paid. So the 117. So I will have to bring 25%.
If you saw the smirk on my face, that's why I was like, oh gosh, what is this lender thinking? So the advice I'm going to give you right now is strictly based on conventional loans, right? There might be a portfolio loan lender who does this different, but if it's a conventional loan, you have to own the house for 12 months with a recorded from the date it's recorded contract for deed, not from the date you purchased it, in order to be able to use the appraised value.
Yeah, and I recorded the contract last month, and it's due. The 6th month would be due in September. So now he's like, "Oh, actually, now you have to bring 20-something thousand to the closing," which is fine. It's just something that I didn't plan for.
Well, a portfolio lender might treat it different. Now, is this a lender like a residential lender, or is this a bank?
It's a broker, So it's like a residential lender.
I think there's a chance you could still get that to use the appraised value. Is it rented?
Yes, it is.
So I definitely don't want this to be about sales, but I'll tell you that if we talk offline, I might be able to get you a different option.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested because I've brought him like 2 or 3 friends, and now he's, I didn't like this very much, but.
Well, admittedly, so there are loans I don't know a lot about, but I do a ton of investment loans, so I know those guidelines inside and out. You know what I mean? So I don't like to trash any other lender because there are certainly areas of the guideline. So the FHA guidelines over 1,000 pages. The VA guideline is not that long. I don't know how many pages, but not that long. The conventional guidelines, FHA, Fannie, and Freddie are both over 1,000 pages. So to know 3,000 pages plus whatever VA is, it's a lot. It's a lot. So, but I can tell you, it has to be a year if it's a conventional loan, and it has to be recorded, which I'm glad you recorded it. It's to your benefit. But if it's currently rented, and if you did you do any repairs to it, by the way?
Yeah, I actually just remodeled the bathroom. Not 2 weeks ago, I spent 2 weekends in there remodeling the whole bathroom. And I was actually going to go and remodel the living room and then the downstairs bathroom. And it actually doesn't need many remodels, but I'm trying to get some forced appraisal. I want it to appraise a little higher. So that's why I'm doing all this stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. It's possible. If it wasn't for COVID, frankly, I know a lender that would do it at 80%. Cash out right now, but all my alternative lenders have gotten a little bit more picky and a little bit more conservative. So I don't want to speak to what I can do now, but we should talk offline and see.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the point I was kind of getting at is if you find yourself, to Tim's point about talking with partners, if you find yourself not in a position, you don't have 50 grand in the bank for an investment loan, you don't have a solid W-2 history for an occupied loan, figuring out what you're good at, if you can get crafty, if you're smart, or if you can just hustle and learn how to do things, surrounding yourself and networking with people who are good at what you want to be good at, you'll make a deal happen. It just might not be as easy as going to Tim, showing him your W-2 and your tax form, and then looking at houses.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Something that's come up for me a lot lately, it seems like the last 6 months, I've done a ton of transactions where the person's using a HELOC to fund their next purchase, right? And I'm a super big fan of that strategy. But what I see people doing, here's another planning thing. What I see them doing often is they're waiting until the bitter end to get the HELOC, and there's some danger there. Number one, timing has to be perfect, or you could lose the new property because you don't get the HELOC done in time. It makes it uncertain for the lender who's doing your new loan to know how much you're going to owe and all these other things, and that creates problems for our underwrite. But the last thing it does is the best HELOCs are on the property you live in. So let's say you're like Alex and you want to go move on to your next property. You're living in one and you want to get a HELOC on it now. You get that HELOC on it today, and then you go apply to go move into another house the next month. If that HELOC lender finds out about it, they'll cancel your deal. They'll decline your loan if it's not fully funded, and they can freeze it if it is. So you want to get, because you're doing the loans as if they're owner occupied, yet you're immediately moving out.
Sure.
That's the definition of fraud. So by all means, if you have a property with any equity that you're living in, immediately get a HELOC on it. You can always make it bigger in the future if you need to, but you want to have that thing going and ready to go. There are lenders who will go up to 100%. Again, pre-COVID, I know for a fact the lender's still doing it, but I just don't know how much longer they'll be doing it. There's a credit union and a bank that both do it. I can give you the info offline. I don't make any money for that, but I'd prefer to do it offline rather than talk about on a video that's going to possibly go online somewhere. But I will tell you this. So if you're looking at the two, the credit union has different payment terms than the bank, and I like the banks a lot better, and here's why. The credit union makes you pay 1% per month of whatever you owe them. So if you have a $100,000 line, your minimum payment's $1,000. The bank takes your interest rate and makes it an interest-only payment, and that interest-only payment would be a lot lower, probably dang near close to half of what the other one would be. So cash flow wise, everything else, I don't think that the credit union, even if it's got a cheaper rate, is worth it. So when you're looking at credit lines and stuff like that, it's always good to compare all the terms and not just focus on rate. People, when they're shopping for loans, they focus way too much on rate and not about all the other aspects of the loan.
Okay, I have a question quick.
Yeah.
So I think we talked one of the last meetups. I have a considerable amount of equity in my house and I'm saving up for a down payment. Should I be more or less focusing on getting a HELOC and then just having cash reserves? Because I could easily pull out 25 grand for another owner occupied property in the next year and then just have an extra 20 grand in reserves for life happens.
Yeah, because let's put it this way, man, just for argument's sake, let's say that the predictions are right and that some people have to let go of homes quickly to avoid foreclosure or whatever happens, right? You find something, you call Adam and you're still trying to save money, you can't do anything, right? You got the HELOC in place and you could take advantage of it. So a lot of people think of loans as a cost, and they are in a lot of aspects. But when you're talking about using a loan as an investment tool, it's really a tool. It can make you money if done right? You got to be smart with it. I'm not saying you don't, but if I had an extra 20 grand, that could be an opportunity that I take advantage of. And what's your downside to getting a HELOC and not using it? You're going to have some closing costs. That's your downside, but they're pretty small, especially on a 20 grand HELOC. I don't do HELOCs for a living, so I don't know what the closing costs are, but I'm going to hunch it's less than $1,000.
Just to have it.
Just to have it. Yep. And like a credit card, you don't pay any interest on it if you don't use it. So why not have it available for you? Because that combined with the reserves that you're gaining definitely could get you a house, even if you don't want to move. Let's say you just find another deal and you're like, I don't want to move to wherever. Minneapolis, right? You said you don't like Minneapolis.
Right.
But all of a sudden, a sweet ass deal comes across in Minneapolis that you can't pass up, and you got an opportunity to buy it.
Right.
Buy it, even if you have to sell it to Presley or Kevin.
Sure.
But you know what I mean? Take advantage of
Right.
it. And so, yeah, I think that in the next few months, having access to being able to do deals will be pretty key. But yes, I would get it right away. And I can set you up with lenders. I don't make a dime for doing it, but it's really just something that I feel passionate about, and hopefully someday I'll be able to help you on something else.
Okay. Is there a certain limit or number you would recommend?
The biggest one you can get.
Okay. So just to have it.
Well,
Yeah.
and like Tim said, you're not getting charged anything on it until you use it. So why not get as much as you can? Maybe
Sure.
you find that sweet deal where you need 28,000, and if you just took a $25,000 HELOC, you couldn't do that deal. So
Sure. So get as much as I can, and then I can adjust from there.
actually, my dad and a good buddy back in Louisville both have HELOCs on their primary residences, and this is how both of them have bought most of their rentals.
Really?
So their rentals pay back the HELOCs and more every month, so they're making money.
Yep.
But they've leveraged their primary residence to do it, and they didn't put a bunch of their excess cash or money they'd saved up to do this. They just took out a HELOC, and my dad bought an apartment building. My buddies bought 14 rentals at this point.
Good Lord.
Right. And even if, so let's say you even don't have a lot of excess cash and you're worried, a HELOC's like a savings account to you. And as long as you're not using it to go to Vegas, right? If you're using it for stupid stuff, you're going to buy a Corvette with it or something. Good
No.
luck to you, right?
It would
But if
just
you're
be for a
using it-
house.
If you're using it to buy a rental property and or save yourself from a disaster because you don't have the cash and now all of a sudden you guys aren't paying, that's what that's there for. It can be safety. People think of debt as being risky, and there's no question debt can be risky. But when it comes to investing, smart use of debt it can de-risk you. Meaning, like, if you put every dollar into trying to pay your mortgage down, let's say you try to pay that mortgage down fast, right? Soon as you put that money in, it's gone. Now all of a sudden, if your tenants stop paying you and your job that you think is going to save forever, you can't work because no one can go to their jobs, you're in trouble, even if you were the smartest guy in the room a couple of weeks ago. But if you have access to cash where you can ride out the storm, you're going to save yourself, you know? So I'm a huge fan, especially right now, but I always have been, of having excess liquidity. I think it's way more important than having small loan amounts myself. Richard, go ahead.
My last
No, it's
question.
okay. Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
let you talk. But I bank with US Bank, and then my mortgage is through Wings Financial. Does it matter who I'm banking with for the HELOC, or does it just depend as far as?
No, I mean, you can check Wings out too. They're just not, they're the only two lender. I only know of two places in Minnesota that give 100%. There's probably more than two, but I've only heard of two.
Okay.
And if you get 90 or 95, admittedly, you're going to see a better interest rate, right? But let's put it in perspective. So the difference in interest rate is probably going to be like a half point or something like that, right? And you think to yourself, oh, a half point, that's so much money, right? On $20,000, it's nothing. Right? 1% on $20,000 is $2,000 for the year it's off, right? Correct? Or is that 10? I'm sorry, that's 10. It's $200 for the year, correct?
Yeah. So
$200 for the year, $17 a month. That's 1%. Now take half of that again. That's how much it is per month if you have it maxed out.
Right.
But what do you lose? Like Jordan said, let's say it's a little bit different and you take out 20, but you could have taken out 40, and the 40 gets you a deal and the 20 doesn't. How much did you lose? Way more than $200 a year.
Right.
You might have lost $200 a month, or even possibly $200 a week. You know, so we focus so much on the one thing that we forget the big picture. And I just try to tell people, keep that big picture in mind. It'll serve you well.
Okay. All right, cool. No, that makes a lot of sense.
So Tim, I had a question quick.
And Richard, you got one too. We won't forget you.
Oh, sorry.
But no,
He can
go
if
ahead,
he
Kevin.
wants.
It's all right. It's all right.
It's to
It's
do
all
with the HELOCs.
We're gonna get
I'm
to
not-
everyone. I'm not gonna stop until
Yeah.
everyone's happy.
I'm not super versed on HELOCs, so I'll have to definitely do some YouTube university on it or whatever to learn more about them. So me and my wife have a primary. We bought a handful of years ago, 3.5 now, so not that long. We did 15% down, and then we paid off PMI. We bought out the PMI, whatever. So we have a decent amount of equity. Do they pull a new appraisal for that?
Yeah.
Will they?
Yeah, will.
Okay. So they do that. And then my other question was, is there a time frame on when you have to use the money by, or is that all?
Yeah,
kind of
but
case,
it's a
case
long time.
specific?
Well,
okay.
it depends on the lender, right? The
Yep.
lender I'm thinking of, I believe, is 10 years to use the money and then 10 years to pay them.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know if it was a year or something like that, where it's a little quick, but
No, but most
okay.
of them in their fine print say if you move out, you can't use it anymore.
Yep.
So, I don't think they really check, but
Yeah.
if they send you a bill in the mail and then it gets returned to the sender, they know you moved out. So.
Yeah, and this is our primary, so we don't plan on moving. But
Sure.
so the other question I had quick, just in case I do have to go, was so we do have our current duplex. We bought it as a 4x2. We did put in a bedroom in one side. We're planning on putting in. We were going to actually do it here in June. We were going to do a non-renewal for our month-to-month tenants that we inherited. However, that kind of got shot down in the last month. So we're planning on possibly doing a non-renewal with the one side that's a 2x1 still. And the big thing for us is we're trying to save up for the next one. We're doing non-owner occupied. So, we're basically shooting at 25% down. You maybe could get a little bit better, but that's kind of what we're using for a standard. So, we're looking at 80 to 100 grand we're going to have to spend or save, sorry. So, obviously saving 100 grand is going to take us a little while. So we're looking to speed that process up. We did 20% down on our one that we just bought in November. But the big thing for us is kind of, and probably nobody knows the answer, but probably more for maybe the realtors on the group, Jordan and Adam. As far as the big question I have is if we do a notice of non-renewal, let's say when the ban is lifted, we do fix it up and they reappraise. We're thinking maybe in August. Do we have any inkling on what the market might do by then? Because we don't want to fix it all up, then doing a reappraisal and it comes in, much lower than what we're thinking, of course, which would kind of squash the whole cash out refinance thought process.
And that's a question I've been getting a ton lately is like, hey, where are we going? What's happening? And I've heard, I talked to an investor today who's been investing for 30 years and he's got quite a bit of equity right at this point. And, he's smart enough to know that he just doesn't know. He's like, hey, he's been investing in commercial multifamily and hotels for decades. And he's like, hey, I've seen a lot of ups and downs. I've seen 9/11. I've seen 2008. And he was alive in the late 80s when that thing happened.
Yep.
And there's just not enough information yet to really know where it's going to go. And there's stuff that could just totally change the game tomorrow. Well, let's say they come out with a cure tomorrow or next week or 3 weeks from now. Things will get rapidly back to normal. And that's just, there's so many variables, we can't really know where it's going.
Yep.
If worst case scenarios play out that they're talking on the news, I don't think it's going to be favorable for everyone. But really, there's anywhere in between cure in a week to, 1 million people or more in the U.S. pass away, and all of those have all sorts of things tied to them. So obviously the cure in a week and restaurants open back up beginning of May, stuff's going to get back to normal pretty quickly. And if everybody can jump back into things, but it's real estate, unfortunately, doesn't have such a barometer as the stock market does, where we have futures at night and you wake up and the stock market either drops or goes up 5%. The way I'm looking at it is I'm just making sure I've got reserves. I'm making sure things are okay. But back to your question of what's it going to appraise at? I know your situation pretty well. I think that 2-3 bedroom units on that property, if they're rented out for good rents, you're more than likely going to get a favorable appraisal, just because lenders look 6 months back, and so how an appraiser looks at things, and how I like to look at them too, because they do that, is is it sold in the previous 6 months? is it within a mile and is it a similar property? So, that may play to advantage for you, is that you may end up still getting a good price. When do you think you would be done with the rehab and look to refinance?
Well, we have to. So it was the inherited renters we had on that side. So Jordan was, just so everyone knows, Jordan was my realtor on it, so he doesn't know obviously the specific property. But yeah, so it was those inherited renters. So we would, and they had a lot of stuff, if you remember. They had the 100-pound cat, if you remember that too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so it's probably
big cat.
But anyways, they we would have to non-renew them. And then obviously that's kind of contingent on when we can do that. So we were actually going to do it, give them the notice a couple days ago for them to be out June 1st, but obviously that got squashed. So we're thinking of non-renewing them for hopefully maybe like August 1st. So they would be out August 1st. We would do reno for 1 month, and then we would look to rent it like starting in September.
Why would you, have you been told you can't give them a non-renewal right now? Or there's no evictions, but I don't think there's a non-renewal rule. I just sold my girlfriend a duplex, and she non-renewing the girl at the end of April, and she just said, okay, and she's getting out. So.
I'll have to look. I thought there was something posted that, my wife just looked it up, but I thought there was something saying you can't give non-renewals right now. I'll have to verify.
I'm not aware of it. If there is, I would double check that. And here's the thing, they probably don't know the law. So I'm not going to tell you I'm not telling you to break the law or whatever. I'm just saying, hey, if you give them a non-renewal, they may say, okay, we got to go. And maybe they secretly want to move somewhere else. It's cheaper. Who knows,
Yeah.
Because I don't see how they could tell you, hey, you can't raise the rent right now. I wish we had Grigori on here. Actually, he would know this much better because I know they do tons of renewals. So we're non-renewals. So
yeah, and we just posted the question on the Millennial Facebook Investor Group, and a handful of people did all comment and say that was in place. The non-renewals weren't allowed right now. But somebody did post a link to an article. So my wife read it. So we'll have to definitely double check on that. But
call the city too.
Okay.
Call they're probably the rental license department, or just call the Minnesota. There's a renters hotline, right, Tim?
It says here most lease terminations are not possible on Brad Shipley's site, but it doesn't say all or not. And it doesn't specifically say about renewal. So I was just I went to an attorney site who has some stuff about it.
Yeah, we'll definitely verify that. That was kind of the thing that stopped us. We actually had the letter drafted up and with a stamp and everything, but we found that 2 days before we were going to send it. So, but either way, that's kind of our situation. Is since we do need such a large down payment, is just coming up with the extra, $40,000 to $50,000. There has been some really favorable sales of properties really close to us, just to the south west of us, that are almost identical to our property. So those sold within the last couple months. They were gone very quick. So I think we could appraise for a decent amount right now. We're just we would like to do the process. We just don't know if we can and if it's smart right now. The other thing we're worried about is the city of Minneapolis getting really backed up with inspections. We didn't know how long that could be, just because I don't know if they're still doing those or not. We haven't reached out, but I assume they're probably slow, or maybe not doing them at all right now. I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone else knows that, but
yeah, I haven't heard personally. I do know that multifamily is still flying. I have seen single family slow down a bit, and I think just in general, I would say the single family buyer is probably a more fearful buyer than a multifamily buyer, but I've not seen multifamily slow down yet. So that does bode well for you too.
But tenants have been, we've had a couple of tenants not let appraisers in properties. So in the very short term, that can be an issue. In the long term, by the time we're talking, it probably won't be, but
yeah.
It'll probably be a game time decision, trying to speculate and plan for the future and what things are going to look like 3-4 months from now like Jordan said, you'll have a good idea of what it will appraise for because you'll have the data. You contact someone who knows what they're doing and they'll be able to give you a good idea, and then you'll make that decision when the time comes. Do we want to just keep this tenant? Do we want to get them out?
Well,
I
we were
think-
going to give them a 60-day notice is the thing. So, you know, because they have an exceptional amount of stuff that they have to move out of the property. So we were going to give them they only have a 30-day notice per the lease they're on right now, but we were going to give them a little bit longer just to allow them time for that. So right now it's just so volatile, 60 days from now, we don't even know what's going to be happening. So.
And
One thing-
maybe you could get them to pay, you could probably just go along with your plan, and then once you're done with the remodeling and construction, say, hey, do I think it's worth trying to refinance this, or am I just going to keep the extra cash flow? Who knows?
Yeah, and that could be absolutely a possibility too.
Then the other thing is you're going to want a decent spread, right? Because if you put like the minimum down, so to speak, and even if you raise the value some, by the time you add some closing costs on top of whatever you would finance, there has to be enough spread to make it worth it, right? So you want to kind of judge, and to everyone this can be different, but you got to have enough, enough there to make it worth the refinance for sure.
Yeah, and I feel we would have 100 and if it appraises for anything what those last two just sold for, which they sold last month, maybe 2 months ago, we would have 150 or 160K in equity.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, I would feel we would have enough. Right now we have a decent amount, so it's just a matter of where it appraises at, I guess.
Cool. All right.
So, but yeah, that's all I had. Thanks, guys.
Richard, you've been waiting patiently, but also if anyone else got questions, you definitely want to answer them all. So what do you got, man?
Well, I was going to ask the appraisal question, and then another one. Are they going to count that line of credit? So you said, if you buy a car and the payment's $250, you got to do $500. Are they going to count that HELOC as also debt if you want to buy another house?
Well, they will if you're using the money. So if you just have the HELOC, it doesn't necessarily hurt you for debt to income if you don't have any money owed against it.
Right.
But as soon as you use it, including on that purchase, yes, of course they will. So if you're using 300, it increases your debts by 300, right? So yeah, that's the difference between using that and cash. But maybe you, instead of, if you've got cash and you've got HELOC, maybe you use all your cash to keep your debt to income low. You wait till after closing and then you just take a draw against your HELOC and deposit that money in your account or whatever, right? There's lots of ways to skin the cat. That's why I still say have that thing available to you, get it ready, so you don't need to mess around to try to get it last minute.
Yep. I listened to the Bigger Pockets yesterday, the rookie one, and then the one this morning. And that's kind of what they were advising, to get all the money you can right now to be ready. Like if the market does shift, then at least you're ready with the HELOC to make a move. But yeah.
Yep. What else? Anyone else got anything on their mind?
If you think that way.
I have 1 second. So I have a question.
Why wouldn't you want that bush?
Kind of on the idea of, I guess this is personal, but wanting to pay off a property. Like I'm putting extra towards my mortgage every month.
Mm-hmm.
And just a couple $100, not a lot, but it turns my 30-year to a 15. And I guess for me, it makes me feel good that I'm paying it off early. But then I also think I know I've heard people fight about this forever,
Yeah.
but like, what would be the benefit just to like have that cash
I don't know,
on
just
top of other stuff that I'm
Thinking about this
saving?
moment all day, and now
And
we're
then maybe like 8 months have cash plus a HELOC to buy a new property.
I feel like
already drinking.
my girlfriend actually posted this question today in the Millennial Investor Focus Group,
Dr. Pepper tonight.
and I gave her my opinion offline, of course. We were sitting right next to each other. I think that it's conventional wisdom says, oh, pay as much down as you can on your primary residence, just get it paid off as fast as possible and get that out of your hair if you're a frugal person. Conventional wisdom, when applying to a single family that you may stay in for 10, 15, 20 years, that's absolutely a good way to go. I think it's, Tim, as a lender, is it worth getting your liability of your home off your balance sheet if you're going to be there for 20 years? Probably. Sure. But conventional wisdom, your Uncle Bob's wisdom doesn't really apply when it comes to investment properties and house hacking. So if you're going to do that with a house hack, so she was saying, hey, well, if I pay down my mortgage faster, won't I have more equity in it when I go to sell? And I said, hey, well, if you save that money and leverage it to buy another property, you're just going to, in almost every case, you're going to make more money off that money. Your return on that money is going to be higher. So think about it this is how I explained it to her. If you were to pay down a property, let's say Adam puts the money into a single family house, the extra $500 a month that he can afford, and we see a normal appreciation rate of 3%. So that means, okay, I've made 3% on my money. I would never invest in anything to get a 3% return.
Sure.
My personal criteria for real estate investments is at least 10%. I got to make 10% or more, or I'm not doing it. I'm not going to put in the work to do it. So paying down your mortgage quicker, and Tim, maybe I'm looking at this crazy, but paying down your mortgage quicker to me is like getting a 3% return on your money.
Okay.
Tim?
Personally, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I'm because I'm the lender, you probably would predict what I'm going to say, right? But so I'll tell you what happened to me, and I would be mortgage free right now if it wasn't for the mortgage crash, right? Because I used to overpay on a 15-year mortgage, right? And then life kicked me in the balls.
Right.
And I had to get rid of that mortgage quickly or I would have went under. Luckily, we were able to, but it was a struggle and I got kind of lucky, right, to even get out of it. So I really like at least having a 30-year mortgage and overpaying on it as opposed to having a 15-year mortgage because you've got flexibility, right? But I do agree with Jordan in that like a liability in a house that doesn't generate income is different than one that generates income. Right.
Totally.
So if I was your dad who didn't have any investment properties, I'd say what you're doing is pretty dang smart, provided you fully funded your retirement.
All right, cool. There's two guys off the door.
Totally.
But for someone who's trying to grow their investments and grow their portfolio, that extra money is going to do better somewhere else. It could do better potentially in the stock market, but
they're both in here. They're both in there.
In getting you another investment property, right? And that the payoff that you're talking about is going to pay off for you 15 years from now. But what could you do with that money over the next 15 years to have it grow? And the answer to me is probably buy more rental properties or at least fix them up a little more. Get the new carpet and the dishwasher to raise the rents in one unit. You know, that's 1 year. And then the next year you're doing another unit because $2,400 that you could be, putting into those. So I personally, I'd stop doing it myself, right? But I don't blame you for doing it. I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. I just think it's probably not necessarily going towards your goals of buying more properties. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's where I see the difference.
Yeah, so I have an investor friend who just paid off his primary residence. You know, they bought it for over $400,000 and he just paid it off and he's so excited about it because it's a big deal, man. I mean, they've only had it for 5 years or so and it's paid off. They're not planning on going anywhere in the near future.
Right.
You know, it's a big house with a big yard and it's everything they ever wanted and they remodeled it the way they wanted.
Right.
Zero bills.
He's like, hey man, if I would have had my way, we would have taken all that money and invested it. But my wife wanted this paid off, and then she said, after this is paid off, you can do whatever you want. You know, you can invest in whatever you want. So
Gotcha.
it's not a bad decision if you're going to stay there forever, but even if you are, I don't know that it's the best use of your money, in my opinion. Of course, this is just my personal opinion. It again, like with him and his wife, it's got to be right for you. It's got to be right for your family, and there's an emotional something tied to everything. Like there's an emotion tied to anything. Taking a HELOC out on your primary residence might scare the shit out of a lot of people.
Right.
But not having a house paid off or having a house paid off may make somebody feel really, really good and feel comfortable doing all sorts of other things. So, yeah, just evaluate, hey, how long am I going to stay here? And does this really make sense for me? Or could I put this money somewhere else to make more money off of it?
Sure.
And whatever you don't do it if you have any credit card debt, if you have a car loan or anything else, right? Because
All I have is a house payment.
Yeah.
A little bit towards
it's a choice, but you are trying to buy another property, right? So I would at least wait until you have the down payment for that myself.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to offer that I used to put big payments towards my mortgage 5 years ago when I didn't really know what I was doing. And I'm not upset with myself for doing that now because I know I've shaved years and years off that loan. And it's not like, oh, if I had that $10,000, my life would be very different.
Right.
I personally, and like Tim said, yeah, if you have any sort of consumer debt, that's the number one offender. But I kind of like a spread. I put a little towards a brokerage account. Obviously, I max out retirement accounts. And if I were to someday put $100 a month towards a mortgage that's at 4.5% interest, a guaranteed return at 4.5%, if that's like 5% of my investment strategy, and maybe I'm, if Jordan or Tim showed me a spreadsheet with, reasonable assumptions, I'm sure they could tell me that $100 goes better somewhere else. And for that reason, I don't do it much, but I kind of do like seeing that spread to go out every week when I, disperse my savings. So, what you're comfortable with, but yeah, if you're making like huge extra payments to your mortgage, I think you could at least cut them back a bit.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think it becomes more like switching, I guess, like conventional wisdom with like the house hacking and investing wisdom. It's kind of hard to mix the two because like I'm house hacking and living where I live. Like I don't own 100 rental properties. And so it's like, you're in the middle between an investor and like a homeowner,
No.
It's better to err on the conservative
I would
side.
say you are wherever your mind is. Because
I agree.
when you move out, that becomes an investment property, right? And you're talking about moving out. So if your mind becomes, I'm going to move out and this is going to be one of many in the future, then I think you're an investor,
Not me this time.
The cool thing about where you're at right now is you could kick everyone out and then you're no longer house hacking and that's just your house, right? So that's a little different, but I think you're probably an investor who's just not both feet in yet, right? Which is okay. I'm, no complaint. It took me a really long time. I mean, my big regret though is that I didn't go harder and I didn't go faster. So a lot of times my advice is to teach people to do stuff that I didn't do to start, and I do it now. I take all of my advice right now. Like I do exactly what I'm telling you guys to do. So,
Mama cozy.
and I made so much more money doing it too. So, for what it's worth.
There you go. Okay.
How about Thor, Logan, Kevin? You guys got anything else? Or Presley?
To ask about paying your mortgage down that Alex just did. I don't know, when I toy about with my wife is, what we normally pay on our mortgage. And if we have that paid off, that extra money we could just, save and, multiply to have investment property down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. It's more what Jordan said, that, you're either making 3% on the appreciation of your primary residence or you're getting 10 plus on an investment property. It's probably better to have it in an investment property.
Well, so something to think of is there's 4 ways people make money when they have an investment property, right? They make money on the cash flow, which we think about, but we forget about the appreciation on that property, and we forget about the tenant paying the mortgage down, the amortization, and then we forget about the depreciation, which is the tax write-off. And when you take all 4 of those things, one of the reasons why owning investment properties is so much more impactful than owning a primary residence. Like if someone told me I rent, but I own investment properties, I like that better than I own a property I live in, but I have 0 rental properties because of all the advantages. And if you can stack those up, think about like, Thor, I have no idea how much your house is worth and how much you have to pay to get it down. But I imagine it's somewhere between 1 and 200,000. And if it's anywhere near that, it could be more, right? But if it's anywhere near that, think of how many properties you could buy over the next few years with a couple $100,000. And then if those properties are going up and they're using all those things to go up, eventually you can take those properties. Let's say kids go to college, you don't want to be a landlord anymore. You sell them, you pay off your house. And I just think, now, is there some risk in that? Yes. But is there also risk in putting every dime you have into your house and getting it out? There's some risk in that too. So I really like having multiple rental properties and trying to grow them quicker. Because again, if you had bought, let's say, 3 rental properties between 2012 and 2015, you probably would have at least $100,000 per property, is my guess. I don't know that for sure, but what I've seen from my clients, you probably have $100,000 per property, $300,000 in a very short period of time. If you wanted to sell those off, you could probably pay your house off. You know, and so now, was that a good time in the world of investing? Yes, it was the best, right? I just picked a conveniently good time, but it's something we all could have been more aggressive in. I was not aggressive during that time until 2017. That's when I got aggressive, and I really regret not being sooner. But I think if you found a way to get good properties that can cash flow, that is a better method than trying to pay off your mortgage quickly. That's probably your mortgage is probably with a rate in the 3s or maybe the real low 4s, and it's tax deductible. And it's really hard. You know, when Jordan was saying it, I agree with the 3%, but not for the reason he said. Really, when you pay down your mortgage, you're saving whatever the interest rate on your mortgage. That's what you're saving, right? So if you got an interest rate of 3.25%, that's what you're saving with that investment. Because you would get that 3%, Jordan, anyway, no matter what the appreciation. That happens whether you pay your mortgage down or not, right? But what doesn't happen is the savings of the interest that you're paying. But that savings of interest, remember, that's tax deductible interest. So saving 3.25% interest is really more like saving something like 3% because you're or maybe even less, maybe 2.75 because it's tax deductible. And there's a little bit of benefit there that you're getting. So that's my thoughts on that subject.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Does your wife support real estate investing?
Yes. She's just much more conservative than me, which is okay. It's a good balance. It's a good balance.
Nice.
I think what I've seen from people is invite your wife onto the same webinar / meetup so they can start getting around. And as they start learning about it, they will get more comfortable. And as they start hearing about people who have done well, just average Joes who have done really well doing it, it gets easier.
Yeah.
And then do it how you want to do it. Like, I'll give you the advice, but if you want to pay your mortgage off first, it's not like that's an awful thing. I just think it's a hard way to go. I think it's really difficult. I think what I'm telling you is a lot easier to do, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you guys have, I've been working on a lot of cold calling. You guys have any tactics or scripts to say to somebody before they hang up on you about purchasing their multi-unit that's not on the market?
I started cold calling for the first time in my life when I was trying to start this cleaning business a couple of years ago. So I was managing all these vacation rentals, and I'm like, I should own a cleaning business. Why not? I have all these cleaners. So I was using a script and just not doing well at all, getting hung up on, people being confused. Why are you calling me? And then I called this guy who was a sales guy, and he's like, okay, kid, stop. What are you doing? I'm in sales. You are effing this up right now. And he kind of schooled me and was like, you come to him as a friend. Like at this point I was cold calling on Airbnb owners. He's like, just introduce, hey, I'm Adam. I do Airbnb. You do Airbnb, right? And so just coming that initial, man, that first 5 seconds is so crucial. And coming to them, finding a common, if you own a multifamily and they own a multifamily, finding that common interest is really key. And I've learned that I'm just not good with scripts. I don't use them because then I'm reading and I'm not reacting. It's not natural. I can't really, anyone who knows anything about people who study sales tactics is to, match the other person's mannerisms. So if they're talking really slow, talk slow. They're talking fast, talk faster. And so when I'm using a script, I'm just not like flowing so much. And then what I try to say in the first 3 seconds is, do you have a minute? Because then all of a sudden I've only imposed for 3 seconds and it's their chance to say, nope, I'm super busy. And then I'm sorry for bothering you, sir. Click, but if they say, yeah, I have a minute. What the hell do you want? Then at least you have an invitation. And if you can find common ground, you might have an in.
Okay. Sounds good.
Anyone else, Jordan?
Oh, I think that's great advice. Hey, buddy.
This is my son, Benny.
Yeah, if you're gonna show up and be able to match their energy and just make them feel at home with you, you're much better off. If you call, the scripts don't work for me either. I have to just call somebody and say, hey man, how's it going? Coming off as a friend helps a lot.
Okay. Sounds good.
Do you have a
The other thing, Thor, is it's just a numbers game. You have to catch people. Not only you have to call a lot of people, you just got to catch them at the right time, right? If people would have called me in 2018 to buy my duplexes, I would have said no. If they called me in the right month of 2018, I would have said, what's your offer? Guys, go out, please. So, right, and the difference was timing. I'm the same person, the same properties. I didn't want to sell in 18, but in 19 I did. So.
Yeah, it's a lot of contacts. That's something you got to get a bit okay with. I do about 200 pieces of direct mail a month. I've been doing 200 pieces of direct mail a month for about 2 years. I've gotten 2 or 3 calls. So it's same thing with calling. It's more direct, but it's just those contacts over and over and over and over.
Yeah. Okay.
And then also something that I've learned is since it is a numbers game and you only have so much time in the day, you might get into a rapport with someone. There's a lot of people who just want to talk, and there's people that will keep you on the phone for 25 minutes. And so I used to want to make all of these quality contacts and network with people. So I would just freaking talk. I'm like, I'm getting them to love me. But like, no, what I should have been doing for that 25 minutes was calling 40 more people. Because chances are the person who is friendly towards you is probably not like handing you a deal. And if they're about to, you can say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm walking to a meeting. I got to call you back. Let's talk about this.
Okay.
So call as many people as you possibly can.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anybody else got anything, guys? Just, I guess, raise your hand if you do, and we can unmute you.
I think I hit unmute so everyone can. No one's like unable to unmute themselves, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
At this point.
Okay, well.
I have one more if no one else does.
Go ahead.
As far as holding, as far as where your cash is, like my emergency fund for 3 to 6 months is in cash. And then anything above that, since I've been saving up for another place, I've been putting that into the stock market. And obviously right now, not feeling great about that.
Yeah.
Part of me, I guess, just as far as where to hold your cash that you're putting forward for a down payment.
You know who Scott? Do you know who Scott? Oh gosh.
Jensen.
Thank you, Jensen. I was gonna say Peterson. Scott Jensen is. I'd ask him. I can get his contact info, but he's gonna have a better answer than us, I think, right?
Okay.
But when you say cash, I hope you mean a bank account cash and not true greenbacks. Because if it's true cash, like dollar bills, you can't use that on your next mortgage, and you might need access to it. So
No, like I have a bank account with liquid available.
it's not wrapped in cellophane and stuffed in your.
No,
wallet.
it's not under my mattress. You know, like my liquid reserves in a bank.
Is it at least in an online bank account and not a brick and mortar bank account?
My emergency fund is at U.S. Bank, so
Okay,
not.
so we're not financial advisors. I just personally happen to put my money into an online bank account, which 3 weeks ago, before things got all messy, was getting close to 2% interest. So
Yeah.
I feel like if it's close to keeping up with inflation, I feel good about it. I
Sure.
also use I just use like a robo advisor where you can have a brokerage account and you can select risk that's comfortable to you. Well, you do whatever you want, but I personally use like I talk about the spread, you know, just kind of being fully diversified with cash. But yeah, I mean, if you want money ready for deals, you want it ready to go, not at the whims of the
Right.
stock market. But get
Yeah,
it on
that's
your
nice.
bank.
I'm putting Scott's contact info in here.
Okay.
He is a financial planner that specializes in working with real estate investors.
Yeah.
Copying and pasting. I'll put his phone number in too. Scott's a nice enough guy and he's trying to increase his business. So I'm putting a phone number in here that's probably a cell because I'm not sure if the other number
Why would you stop there?
is correct office number. But I'd contact him. He's a great resource, and I'd at least see what he has to say. He might have some.
Come here. Come to me. Come to me.
Is he the guy that goes to these meetups?
He goes to a lot of them, yeah.
Okay. He's just opened his business up last year, I think.
Yeah, he had to get licensed. He's been doing it for a long time, right? But
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
like his company that he works for wasn't really focused on working with investors, and he was. So he needed to start a company where he could make it work.
He dropped off.
His
And most of those guys, they're just selling
I almost got him.
securities, right? And he wanted to do more.
Yep. He ain't gonna come back. I cracked all his armor.
Hey guys, I gotta jump on something here. I gotta write an offer real quick.
Yeah, no, good news.
All right.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
so the real estate market still
I hit
is
him
moving.
twice.
You know, people are buying and selling houses. I just listed another one and writing another offer today. So, you know, I think everybody's real scared about what's happening, but you know, use this info here to help buy your second or next property, or maybe it's your first. So that's fine. One property isn't going to make or break you. You know, if it's your first property and you're putting 3.5% down on it, or if your next one you're putting 5% down on it, you're not gonna die if things just go horribly bad. If you can keep paying the mortgage and you're cash flowing on it, great. You know, my first broker held 3 properties that he bought in 2006 and 2007 through the crash, and just sold them a year or two ago, but they were great properties for him the whole time. So yeah, just use this plan to help buy your second or next property and you'll be in great shape.
yep.
Cool.
I think that's a great way to end it, and I totally agree.
All right. I will see you guys later.
Good
Thank
luck
you.
on your offer.
I
Yeah,
know.
thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys.
No problem. Thanks. Take it easy. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.